Hi folks, Dom Lawson here from the very splendid Metal Hammer magazine, your one-stop shop for heavy metal info, entertainment and education. That's not an advertising slogan that they're likely to use, I don't suppose. But it is the Heavy Metal Bible, and other magazines are available, but I wouldn't recommend them. Anyway, it's a beautiful sunny day here in West Sussex, and so I'm stuck indoors wearing a hat, which may give you some indication of the extent of my ongoing mental disintegration, but there you go. I'm going to talk to you today about a band who polarise opinion, probably like more like no other, I would say, in metal at the moment, certainly in the UK anyway. I don't know if... I think our perspective is somewhat skewed, and they're a British band, so obviously we probably have more to say about them than other people. But anyway, the band I'm talking about is Dragonforce. Now I'm a contrary fucker sometimes, not all the time. I'm quite easily swayed by public opinion, and I do try and be reasonable. But Dragonforce are a band that seem to incur a vast amount of vitriol from people. And I can kind of see why, really. I mean, I from the first album onwards, I like the band. I don't, I think I've made it fairly plain on these ridiculous podcast things that 8 people watch, that I like some power metal, but I have issues with a lot of it and can't be bothered with the vast majority of it. But then that's true of black metal as well, to be honest with you. So it's not just power metal that I find a bit of a weakener. But certainly there are plenty of bands within power metal that I really like, and I would say that particularly the albums Sonic Firestorm and Inhuman Rampage I really like. I like Dragonforce. Yes, they're preposterous, and yes, that I think most people will have heard it's not even a joke really, the often quoted argument that they only have 2 songs, the fast one and the ballad, but I kind of like them. I've always liked the spirit of what they do. I like the fact that it's exuberant. I like the fact that it's kind of celebratory. I like the fact that it's really, really fast, and I like fast music. And I think, if I'm going to listen to power metal, I want to listen to something that's got some balls behind it. And I've always thought that Dragonforce have, really. And I totally understand why people think they're rubbish. I get that, I've seen them live a few times. Sometimes they've been brilliant, sometimes they've been woeful. But generally speaking, I find Dragonforce entertaining. Now, it's not some kind of profound cerebral thing that it's not like me listening to an Emperor record or flipping Opeth or something. It's not, it doesn't touch me on that level. But in terms of sing-along tunes with ridiculous lyrics and loads of widdly guitar solos, I think they're hard to beat, really. I think they're great fun, and as I've said before, fun is an underrated thing. But anyway, I think that you will struggle to find many people that thought that 2008's Ultra Beatdown album was anything other than a minor disappointment, really. Inhuman Rampage was obviously the album that made Dragonforce a big band, I suppose. They did really well in the States on that record and had songs on video games and stuff. Not that I know anything about video games, but I don't even know if you're supposed to call them video games. What are they called? These are console games. I don't fucking know. I'm 40 in October. I have no business knowing about that kind of thing. But they certainly did really well, and I think they surprised a lot of people. They ended up doing headlining tours in the States and stuff, and I think it's considering the kind of music they play, I think they've kind of overachieved really in many ways. That's no criticism of their music at all. That's just you wouldn't expect a power metal band to do that well, particularly a British one, because it's not something we're particularly known for, really. But anyway, Ultra Beatdown was a disappointment. I thought it just sounded like a Dragonforce album. They were kind of, whether they were going through the motions or not, I don't know. They probably felt that they made a great record, but it wasn't something that I listened to more than a couple of times for pleasure. I kind of, it's all right. It's got a couple of good tunes on it, but it all seemed a bit kind of repeating the formula of Inhuman Rampage, but not as good. But anyway, so Zippy or ZP left the band, and there was obviously some degree of turmoil going on in the Dragonforce camp, and so it's taken them 4 years to make a follow-up. But now they have a brand new singer, Mark Hudson, who is a young lad with a frankly startling set of pipes, and who, there's been a lot of talk and quotes from Herman and other members of the band saying how, the band kind of feel reborn and it's like a new chapter for the band, and they're really excited, and the creative process for this new album has been brilliant, and they feel kind of creatively reborn and all the rest of it. But obviously, as as a journalist or just as a fan, you sit down and plonk on a new Dragonforce album, you kind of know what you're going to get, really. I don't think anyone's going to sit down and go, well, this is going to have a kind of jazzy feel to it, or they'll be hitting the kind of necro black metal vibe on this one. It's going to be fast power metal is what it's going to be. But the new album, which is called The Power Within, which I believe is out next Monday on Essential Music Records, is actually full of surprises, and yes, it does feature a large amount of of incredibly fast power metal on it, and I think that if you're a Dragonforce fan, you'd be very disappointed if it didn't, really. But it's the breadth of what they do on this album, I think, exceeds any of their previous records, and although if I say that Dragonforce have taken risks and done new things on this album, I don't mean that to say that they've done anything really radical that's going to shock anyone particularly. But I just think that the songwriting on The Power Within, and the structure of the songs, and the variation in tempos and so on is kind of presents a much more what's the word I'm looking for? Intriguing, I suppose, array of ideas for Dragonforce compared to previous records. Now, Inhuman Rampage was kind of like a non-stop onslaught of fast power metal with, I think, one or two ballads bunged on it, and this is in a way the same, but there's a greater variety of stuff on this record. Now, the song titles escape me. Hang on a minute, I've got them written down somewhere. I mean, it starts off, as you would imagine, pretty much with a song which is called Holding On, which goes off like the fucking clappers, and it's a kind of, I guess it's the opening track on the album, the first album with Mark Hudson, and so it's almost like, here's our new singer, and off he goes, and he's brilliant. I think I prefer his voice to Zippy's, not by much, but he's got a perfect voice for this kind of music, and it's one of the catchiest things they've ever done. And what I think is interesting is that one criticism that I think's been levelled at them in the past is that you can kind of cut and paste tunes and riffs from one song to another, and no one would really notice the difference. But on this album, there's a lot more in the way of distinctive songwriting. I think the songs are more memorable and easier to tell them apart, frankly. And so yeah, Holding On's a cracker. I mean, there are other really fast ones on the album which kind of fit what you expect from Dragonforce. There's a song called Give Me the Night, which is really, really, exciting, really, and one that reminded me of Iron Maiden, but kind of on helium, which is called Heart of the Storm, which I think is brilliant, which I really, really like. But I think it's the curveballs, for want of a less worn out phrase, that make this a really great metal record, I think. And again, if you don't like Dragonforce, you won't like it. So you can switch off now, or just stare at my hat. You can kind of mute your computer and look at my hat and think about King Diamond. But there's a track called Cry Thunder, which is much more mid-paced. And it really suits them, I mean, I think when Dragonforce began, I guess the intention was to kind of separate them a bit from the general morass of power metal bands by doing the fast thing, and by playing faster than everybody else and having the kind of crazy computer game noises and stuff in there as well. But actually, when they drop down to a slower pace and do something that you might expect from other power metal bands, that kind of tempo, it actually suits Dragonforce really well, and they have a distinctive melodic style, which means that it still sounds like them. It doesn't just sound like any old generic power metal. There's another song called Seasons, which again is pretty mid-paced. I mean, mid-pace for Dragonforce is a couple of notches up for most people's mid-pace, but it's mid-pace nonetheless. And again, it's got a huge chorus, huge tune, and it's got more ideas on it. I think there's a degree of subtlety on this album which hasn't been on any of the previous 4 Dragonforce albums. I think there's There's more inventiveness in the arrangements. There's more twists and turns in the songs, and that leads me to the track that I think is the best thing on this album, which is called Wings of Liberty. Now it's 7 minutes long. It starts off as a kind of overwrought ballad, which I'm a sucker for anyway. But then it kind of veers off on various tangents. It's got a really fast, aggressive bit in it. It's got a really amazing breakdown bit, not metalcore breakdown, but a kind of bit where the song, stuff drops out and it's quieter and slower and mellow with a frankly fantastic guitar solo on it. It's got some wibbly noises on it, as you'd imagine, and a chorus that is so vast. I mean, it's one of those choruses that you could kind of slap a saddle on and ride it around the planet. It's just fabulous. I think by far the best thing that Dragonforce have ever done. Even more so than Through the Fire and the Flames. I think this is, whether or not they're going to play the 7 minute, centerpiece live or not, I don't know. But yeah, Wings of Liberty. Check that track out. I think it's fabulous. And yeah, Mark Hudson does a great job throughout this record. It was always a kind of tough one for Zippy when he was in the band, really, because he was battling against a relentless kind of tirade of whittling guitar solos, and although he was a great singer with a very distinctive voice, it was the vocals were almost incidental at times on Dragonforce records. On this though, Mark Hudson really kind of stamps his identity on it, I think, and the lyrics are the usual guff about triumph and glory and persistence and whatever, jumping up and down, whittling, that kind of stuff. Lots of references to storms and the night and so on. But yeah, Wings of Liberty, wow, a real stunning tune, I think. And I, it would be easy for me to sit here and go, oh yeah, Dragonforce, bollocks, because that's what a lot of people will do. A lot of people will slag this record off regardless of what it sounds like. But I think they're a British metal band that have done really well. I think they, it's easy to be cynical about stuff, but they're a very uncynical band in many ways. Just to play this kind of music with that much enthusiasm and passion, I don't think you can be that much of a cynic, because you're walking into a kind of a wall of scorn and contempt from snooty types who think that metal should be one thing and not another. But I think power metal is supposed to be fun, and Dragonforce are about as fun as it gets, really. So I recommend this album, The Power Within, if you're into power metal, if you're into traditional metal, or if you just want to support the British metal scene and check out one of its biggest bands and see what they're up to. I think it's a really, really strong record, yeah, I should be listening to it a lot, I think, which I don't think I've ever really done with the Dragonforce album before. I think I really enjoyed Inhuman Rampage, but I think this, after 3 or 4 listens, is probably my favourite Dragonforce album yet. So there you go. Right, I'm going to sit here and boil with my hat on for no good reason, and you're going to go and do whatever it is you do, which probably involves tea and biscuits, I should think. So there you go. This was Nine Sandwich. I was Dom Lawson. And this is the button that ends this absolute heap of steaming twaddle. So cheers. See you again soon. Well, I won't, but you know what I'm saying.